break down Kansas State at some point, too.
I think, and I'm going to have to keep looking at it because we've been kind of on the, rolling through. I think that the toughest schedule in the Big 12 for the newbies is BYU and maybe even BYU overall. But West Virginia's schedule, I just told you this during the break. The coach on the hottest seat in the Big 12, and it's not even close, is Neil Brown. I mean, he's the one that got a new athletic director. He was on the hot seat anyway. West Virginia did not have a good season last year. There's all these moving parts there. Their schedule before the bye is, I think that's Duquesne, and correct me if I'm wrong, West Virginia fans, but Penn State, Duquesne, Pitt, Tech, and TCU. And TCU's on the road, as is Penn State. So the two best teams on that, based on
let me tell you, just
year,
an on-conference schedule along with Penn State and Pitt. That's a tough little start.
West Virginia's not making a bowl game unless something changes.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mention that you go to Houston after the bye. You've got to go to UCF too. So it's not easy.
And I'm glad that those two are playing because, again, right down there on the East Coast. Somebody just brought this up we mentioned Texas, and they have the game in Alabama, and then in late October, the game in Ames. Houston. I want you guys to hear as I read these off. Where are these games? UTSA, home. Rice, on the road, in the same city. TCU at home. Sam Houston State at home. At Lubbock. Home against West Virginia. Home against Texas. And then at Kansas State, they don't leave the state of Texas until also October 28th.
Although, to be fair, Houston to Lubbock is
that's 12-hour flight.
Well, Houston to Lubbock is as long of a flight as it would be probably almost Houston to Orlando, which they also do at the end of the year. So while they don't leave the state of Texas, that's a little bit of a different thing, especially for Houston and Texas Tech, who will be the furthest apart in the state, almost border to border there. So that one, they don't leave the state of Texas, but they go to a completely different part of it. I mean, the topography changes like 6 times before you even get there.
So does the time zone.
Yeah.
So does the time zone. Let's see. Ryan Nelson, UT would have gone to Morgantown this year. Glad to avoid that trip because if it would stayed the flip of last year's schedule to this year. Casey Latham, does the championship game criteria change this year? Is it still the top 2 in the conference with records?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yes. Sark better get it done with this schedule or he's toast.
He really should. I mean, I don't know about toast, but he really should. I mean, it's an easy schedule for Texas. I mean, on paper, it really is. Again, you don't leave Texas from week 2 to week 13. You don't leave Texas from September 9th to November 18th. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy to not leave in that amount of time. So 2+ months, they will just stay within the confines of, it's a large state, second largest behind Alaska, but still, that's pretty comfortable. So, I'm not a believer in any conspiracy theories. All that, the Big 12 is going to punish us and all that jazz that was being talked. That turned out to be totally false, like so many other things. But I'm with you. Sark, with what he's got coming back, I said that before the schedule was dropped, but now seeing the schedule, an Alabama game, and then beyond that, I mean, it's a crapshoot, but they should have a very good year next year, and no excuses outside of, obviously, injuries, which nobody can control. But on paper, that's setting up to be a big 2023 for them.
They are playing some teams who last year, obviously, with what Kansas State did and what TCU did, and at the end TCU did and then Tech at the end. But the Alabama game, you win that game, and you set yourself up to be a part of it. You even lose that game early, but it's a tight game. You have at least the people on your schedule that allow you to get yourself right back up into it, and it depends on where Alabama's going to be ranked anyway at the start of the year, whether it's 1, 3, 4. It won't be much lower than that. So, TCU, the defending champion. The Deion Sanders game, right off the top. Colorado has TCU, and I think in either week 2 or 3 they play Matt Rule in Nebraska. And I'm not comparing Nebraska to TCU, but Colorado and TCU right off the top, we knew that. Remember, Colorado was trying to change that to slip a game with Arizona State in front of that one, and then Kirk Herbstreit leaked out the information because Dion told him. And so that game was not nuked, but it was not moved up, which Colorado would like to have probably had that. Not that Arizona State's a gimme, but that kind of changed what Colorado was going to have early on in the season. So if you are a fan of any of these teams, the chat room again, the text line's going on. By the way, we will get into UT men's basketball getting to 7-2, Baylor dropping to 5-4 in Austin. Texas's bench was electric at 30-6 advantage in bench scoring. They had as many threes. We'll have Terrence Oglesby on today at 3:30 to discuss men's basketball tonight. Hell of a game between Kansas at home against K-State.
By the way, Cuz's Corner says he really likes the way West Virginia's schedule is lining up. No Texas, no K-State, no Iowa State, who they usually struggle with the new Kansas. But I wholeheartedly disagree. Now, look, I'm not a West Virginia fan like he is, but I think just that the first few weeks, and maybe he likes it because he wants Neil Brown to go. I didn't get that from being on a show, but like to me, if there was a conspiracy to get Neil Brown gone, those first games before the bye would be it. I mean, Penn State and TCU on the road in that alone is uncomfortable for me. I would say that if I was Clemson, I wouldn't want to play those teams in the first 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, that's tough.
I mean, there's a real shot that they're like 1-4 the first 5 weeks. I don't know how good Pitt's going to be, but I would not take them against TCU right now. I would not take them against Texas Tech right now. I would not take them at Penn State right now. Duquesne you should beat, but, outside of Pittsburgh and Duquesne, those other three, at least in that first, block is going to be pretty tough. I do think the saving grace is you do play – at Houston, at Central Florida, BYU at home, Cincinnati. You've got all 4 of the new schools. And if there is, again, growing pains, and they don't just come sliding right in like they've, basically, just going from American ball to Big 12 ball is no leap at all, then, maybe this is more favorable. You're playing 4 new schools who aren't quite, all the way geared up for Big 12 play, and it's all in the end of the year. It's all the second half of the season, basically. I mean, Houston's right there at the midway point, but Central Florida's in late October, BYU's November, Cincinnati's mid-November, and you got road trips to Oklahoma and Baylor. You certainly, I wouldn't think would probably be favored in those, but that might work out well for you. I mean, if you're trying to put a positive spin on it, that you're playing all 4 of the new schools may work in your favor as opposed to having to play, whoever it is that's missing off the schedule at first glance. I guess K-State you're not having to play. You're not having to play Kansas. You're not having to play, let's see here. I can't tell who else off the top of my head. Iowa State. That might work in their favor, but it also could be taken as pretty tough as well. All in the eye of the beholder.
I mentioned TCU won the regular season champion, and everyone's losing their freaking minds over the fact there is no regular season champion in college football. I still think there's no banner. There are no, again, I get what you're saying, so I'm sorry that I offended some of you because I mentioned that TCU was the regular season champion. Kansas State is the defending Big 12 champion. I thought maybe I was at least trying to clarify that by saying what they did in the regular season. That's okay. That's from Alex, and that's from everyone else. But I did say that, and you're right. All right, now, there are a couple of you, like Dylan Gabriel. Where did he play before Oklahoma?
UCF.
Mm-hmm. That will be an interesting game, won't it? That game against UCF will be a home game for OU and Norman. But that's kind of Oklahoma should be favored. We don't know who they are. They'll have already played Texas. They will have already had a couple of other games under their belt. But then, after the game with Texas, they get to host UCF, and it'd be an interesting moment for UCF and Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, that one is interesting. There's another one. I'm sure there might be a couple others of these, but at least high-profile. Sam Hart, this is outside the Big 12, obviously, but yesterday, Notre Dame plays Wake Forest, so you've got Sam Hartman against his old team, Dylan Gabriel against his old team. So if you're a fan of quarterbacks and their matchups, those are a couple interesting ones throughout the season to look forward to. And UCF at Oklahoma, to me, will be interesting because of that's going to be a pretty wide open offensive game between Gus Malzahn and Jeff Lebby, who used to be there. That's the other thing is Jeff Lebby against Oklahoma or against UCF, provided he doesn't get another job between now and then, like Alabama or something.
CJ Scott, I'm disappointed. I was hoping that Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, and Houston were not going to play each other, so all of them could go unbeaten. A guy can hope, can he? So, TJ, thank you for that comment as well. Ryan Nelson, UCF going to Boise in a non-conference game. Good to see that. One of the things that, in Oklahoma,